My father took my older brother. My mother kept the middle one. And I ended up in an orphanage. 8 years later, when I won a federal hackathon and became famous in the IT community, they suddenly remembered my existence. We were busy, but always thought about you. They said. I just chuckled. Well, let's take it in order. My name is Kira, and I was 12 when my life went to hell. We lived in a 2-room apartment on Renovate Street in Tver. Me, my parents, and 2 older brothers, Ilya and Artyom. Ilya turned 16 last month. Artyom, 14. An ordinary family, like thousands of them. My father, Oleg Alexeyevich, was toiling away in the office of some logistics company in the city center. Mother Natalia Viktorovna worked part-time at the cash register in the store across the street. On Sundays, they would gather around the table. Solyanka, mashed potatoes with cutlets, dried fruit compote. Such was the tradition. I always felt like an extra in this idyll. Not that it was open. But the brothers were copies of their parents. Ilya had his father's eyes and frowned. Artyom has his mother's smile and a habit of tugging at his hair when he's nervous. And I'm some kind of genetic error. A glitch in the program. When relatives came to visit, they were always delighted. Oh, Ilyusha is just like his dad. Or Artyomka. The spitting image of Natasha in her youth. And they looked at me and said, and that's Kira. And that's it. Period. Let's move on to discussing the weather and gas prices. Something strange had been happening at home in recent months. My parents would whisper in the kitchen, thinking we were asleep. My mother would often come out of the bathroom with red eyes. And my father would start staying late at work, coming home after midnight and immediately collapsing onto the couch in the living room. Ilya didn't notice. He would either scroll through his smartphone, chatting on vKontakte, or disappear with his friends. Artyom was hanging out at Dusha 3 after school. He had a basketball section there, training in the evenings. And I was sitting at home and feeling the air getting thicker. That Sunday started as usual. Mom cooked a roga, sliced herring under a fur coat. Some kind of holiday. Or something. Dad turned on the television in the kitchen. The news was droning on about another increase in housing and communal services rates. And then he turned off the sound and looked at us. Kids, he began. And I immediately understood that he was about to fly in. Mom and I need to tell you something. My stomach twisted. As if before an algebra test for which I had not studied. Ilya tore himself away from the phone. Artyom stopped chewing. We are getting a divorce, Mom blurted out. As if she had swallowed a bitter pill. There was such silence that you could hear the people arguing in Petrov's apartment next door. And Artyom was the first to come to his senses. What would happen to us? Don't worry. Mom reached out to pat his hand. We'll figure it out. Nothing will change for you. We both love you. Dad added in the same tone that people usually use to lie about Santa Claus. This is between us. You have nothing to do with it. Ilya somehow relaxed when he heard this. So, we will live with one of us. No big deal. Artyom returned to his herring, and I watched as my parents exchanged glances, as if they were having a wordless conversation in some secret language of their own. And I realized that they were lying. I'm not telling me something important. The following weeks flew by in a kind of fog. Dad moved to a rented 1-room apartment on Moskovsky Prospect. Mom started taking on extra shifts. Now she was disappearing to the store from morning until night. Ilya never showed up at home. Either work as a courier at Yandex or friends. Artyom went straight to training after school. Then, homework and sleep. And I sat in the empty apartment and thought, maybe it's because of me. Maybe if I weren't here, they wouldn't have gotten divorced. The district court hearing was scheduled for Thursday. Mom said that we all had to come. Like, for the sake of order, we'd skip school. No big deal. The courtroom looked like a school auditorium. Only gloomier. Wooden benches. A coat of arms on the wall. A judge at a high table. A woman of about 50 in a black robe. The lawyers in suits rustled papers, uttered incomprehensible terms, division of property, determination of the children's place of residence, alimony, obligations. And then the judge asked, "How do you plan to resolve the issue with the children?" And then my father uttered the words that cut my life into yes, and after, "Your Honor, given my financial situation after the division of property, I am ready to take one child, my eldest, son Ilya, into my care. He is already 16. He earns extra money almost independently." It was as if an electric shock struck me. One child. And why don't we count Artyom and I? It was the mother's turn. I agree with my ex-husband. My salary. She hesitated. In short, I'll take Artyom. He is 14. He will soon be able to earn extra money too. And the youngest daughter, the judge clarified. Leafing through the documents, Kira, 12 years old. The parents exchanged glances, and Mom pronounced the verdict. Kiri. She still has a lot of growing to do. These are big expenses. School, clothes, clubs. Oleg Alexievich and I made a decision. Neither of us can take on her upbringing. The words reached me as if through cotton wool. Neither of them can take on her. In that case, the judge wrote something down about me. The child will be temporarily placed in a family placement center until the custody issue is resolved. We agree, my parents said in unison. My ex-parents. And then I snapped. It's not true. I jumped up from the bench. You can't throw me out. I'm your daughter too. Ask me what I want. The judge banged her gavel. Girl, sit down. The decision was made in your interests. In my interests, I was already screaming. Tears were streaming down my cheeks. You're kidding me. 2 bailiffs approached me from both sides. Let's go, one of them said, hitting me under the elbow. Don't make it complicated. They led me out of the room. I turned around. Ilya was buried in his phone. Artyom was looking out the window. Mom was dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Dad was signing something. No one said goodbye. No one even looked in my direction. The Rodnik Family Placement Center was located in an old building of a former kindergarten on the outskirts of Tver. Gray walls, small windows with bars, the smell of bleach in the corridors. Not a grandparent's home in the classic sense. More like a transit point for people like me. I was assigned to a room with 3 girls. Sveta is 15. She has been here for 6 months. Her parents are alcoholics. Masha, who has been falling asleep crying for 10 years, calls for her mother every night. She died. There was no father from the start. And Nastya, my age, a professional shelter worker, has been moving around different centers for 2 years. The main thing is, I don't get used to it, she said on the first evening. You'll get used to it. It will hurt more. I kept waiting for it to be a mistake. For my parents to come to their senses and come, I called Ilya. The subscriber was unavailable. Artyom was disconnected. I got through to my father on the 3rd day. Kira, that's enough. His voice sounded irritated. What happened? Happened. You need to move on. But I want to go home. It will be better for everyone. You'll understand when you grow up. And short beeps? Mom held out longer. Answered the 5th call. Why did you leave me? I cried into the phone. Someday you'll understand. Her voice was cold. Alien. It's for the best. After that, the numbers stopped answering. Blocked. Probably, I decided that since they'd erased me from their lives, I'd erase them. Let him choke on his happiness. Svetlana Petrovna from the guardianship authorities, a lady of about 50 with a bouffant and an eternal tablet, promised to find me a wonderful foster family. She told me, as if from a piece of paper. Loving parents who dream of a daughter, a full house, a happy childhood. Ali? Of course, the Zurovlevs were the first. An apartment in a 9-story panel building in a residential area. Evremont from Leroy Merlin. 2 wards. Younger than me. Alexei Zhuravlyov. A Sberbank allocation operator. Marina. A housewife. It is quite possible to live on the guardianship allowance if there are several children. Here is your room. Kirochka. Marina showed a small room with pink wallpaper. I hope you like it. I didn't like it. Neither the room, nor the pic, nor the fake care. At dinner, they asked about school. Hobbies as if from a manual for adoptive parents. I decided to check how long their patience would last. She refused to wash the dishes. Was rude. Turned on the music at full blast. It lasted for 2 weeks. We are very sorry. Marina told Svetlana Petrovna. But we can't cope. The girl has a difficult character. The second Melnikov family lasted 3 weeks. An intelligent couple from the center. He is a history teacher at the gymnasium. She is a librarian. They tried to approach me scientifically. Dragged me to the school psychologist. Offered family conversations over tea and cookies. I wore them out with scandals and demonstrative ignoring. The third Nikitin family gave in after 10 days. By that time, I had perfected my tactics. Slammed doors so hard that neighbors complained. Refused to eat this crap. Regular buckwheat with a cutlet started arguments out of nowhere. I wanted every family to understand that I was one brand. Some tried to be patient. The Melnikovs sat me down in the kitchen and tried to have a heart-to-heart talk. Like, let's discuss your feelings. Your anger. Fuck you and your feelings. I wanted one thing, to be sent back to the center so that I could prove myself. That no one needs me. Period. The Nikitins lasted the longest. A whole month. They had a daughter, a year older than me. And at first, they tried their best to create an atmosphere of acceptance. I quickly fixed it. Convinced their Alyonka that my parents loved me more. And had daily showdowns. In the end, even they couldn't stand it. Krina. I changed 4 families in a year. I celebrated my birthday in the center. A wafer cake from the nearest store. 1 candle. Tea in faceted glasses with children I barely knew. Last year at this time I was at home with a family that didn't want me. But at least there was a place where I came from. Svetlana Petrovna never tired of repeating Kira. You are your own enemy. Give it people a chance. I don't need your chances. I snapped. She didn't understand. I wasn't sabotaging. I was defending myself. If you don't let them get close, they won't abandon you. Simple arithmetic of survival. You're a smart girl. She sighed after another return. Why complicate things? Why simplify things? Do I need a family that loves me? Don't I? I had a family that was supposed to love me. Where is it now? She was making notes on her tablet. Probably writing about behavioral problems. A difficult teenager. Difficulties with adaptation. Let the truth be better than sweet lies. The center became my home more than any foster family. Everything is clear here. Routine. Rules. No illusions. No one expects gratitude or happy smiles. Other children understood without words. We are all such rejects here. I began to get used to the thought, this is how I will live. From place to place. Never staying anywhere. No one needs me. Maybe some people are just destined to be lonely. But one day, Svetlana Petrovna came with news, Kira. Here's the deal. Your distant relatives want to meet you. What other relatives? They found out about your situation through my mother's side of the family and want to talk? I don't know any relatives. They suggest calling first. Just talking. I agree. I shrugged. What difference does it make? If they are even a little bit like my parents, they will quickly change their minds. They say they are very nice people. And they don't have children. That's what got me. No children. No competition. No one can be better than me. The next day, Svetlana Petrovna sat me down in her office and turned on the speakerphone on the phone. Hello. Kira. The woman's voice was warm, without falseness. It was Aunt Lida, your mother's cousin. And Uncle Boria was next to her. Hi. I muttered. We found out what happened to your parents. We're very sorry you had to go through this. I was silent. It was the first time someone apologized for what was done to me. I understand. It sounds strange. Uncle continued. We've never met, but we'd really like to. Kira, we want you to live with us. We don't have children of our own, added Aunt Lida. We're almost 50. We've been married for 20 years. And we've always dreamed of having a daughter. We've already talked to your parents. They agree to the adoption. The documents have been signed. Of course they agree. To finally get rid of responsibility, that's their dream. If you don't mind, we'll come in a couple of days. Get acquainted. And then it's up to you. Okay. I squeezed out. They arrived exactly 2 days later. Aunt Lida turned out to be a short woman with soft features and kind brown eyes. Uncle Boria, a large man with a beard, in a knitted sweater. Ordinary people without pathos. Kira. Aunt hugged me, and I didn't pull away. I am so glad to see you. We sat down in the meeting room. They told about themselves without embellishment. Honestly, Uncle Boria works as an electrician in a management company. Aunt Lida is a nurse in the 7th Polyclinic. They live in a private house in a village near Tver. Kira, if you come with us, it will be forever, said Uncle Boria. We want to adopt you for real. You will be our daughter. Look. Auntie got out her phone. This is our house. A 1-story house with an attic. A plot of 800 square meters. Apple trees in the yard. Then she showed a photo of the room. This will be yours. We have already started renovating. A room, light blue walls, a large window, a desk, a bookcase, a cozy bed with a patchwork blanket. Beautiful, I said sincerely. Well, will you come with us? I looked at them, trying to understand whether this was another deception or not. But they did not promise mountains of gold, did not demand gratitude. They just wanted me. I will go. 3 days later, they took me. I left my bag with things in the trunk of an old Niva, said goodbye to Nastya and the others. I never went back to the center. The house turned out to be even better than in the photo. My room was a fairy tale. And most importantly, no other children. Just me. My aunt and uncle didn't pry into my soul. I didn't demand that I open up. They just lived. We had dinner together. Soup. A main course. Tea with pretzels. They asked about school. Helped with homework. Bought normal clothes. Textbooks. Everything we needed. 3 months later, the adoption was finalized. I took their last name. Borisova. I gave up my previous last name without regret. Why do I need a reminder of the family that threw me out? The old Kira was gone. I became someone new. Kira Borisova. Uncle Boria helped me set up a computer in my room. Old, but working. And then I broke through. It turned out that I had a talent for programming. I started with simple scripts, then made toys, solved puzzles. It was so natural, as if I was born for this. At 15, my aunt and uncle enrolled me in Quantorium, a technology park for school children, plus courses at TVSU. In the computer engineering department, I was the youngest there. But I grasped everything on the fly. Teacher Mikhail Petrovich said, "You have a natural gift for algorithms." I went to Olympiads. First municipal, then regional. I took part in Yandex Cup Junior and won prizes one after another. The thrill was not even in the diplomas. but in the fact that I was finally seen, not as a problem teenager from an orphanage, but as a talent. My aunt and uncle were proud of me, in a way that my biological parents never were. They came to every Olympics, took pictures with cups, bragged to the neighbors. At first it was wild. Adults who really care. In all these years, not a word from my biological family. Not on my birthday. Not on New Year's. They crossed me out and forgot about me. Sometimes I thought about Ilya and Artyom. But I pushed these thoughts away. What difference did it make I graduated from school with a gold medal? 100 points on the Unified State exam in computer science. I got into the university on a budget. And even with an increased scholarship, at the graduation, Aunt Lida cried. Uncle Borya clicked his camera like a pair of paparazzi. We are so proud of you. My daughter. Aunt hugged me. You deserved it, added the uncle. And I realized that these people, who are not even close relatives to me, are happier with my success than those who gave birth to me. At university, I dove headfirst into the cat, while my classmates were partying and drinking. I was sitting in computer classes, sawing projects, and started freelancing websites, apps, and bots for Telegram. The money started coming in pretty good. By the third year, I earned more than many adults. My aunt and uncle started helping. I would pay for utilities, buy new equipment, or something for the dacha. They resisted, saying, no need. We can do it ourselves. But I insisted. They saved me. Now it's my turn. The psychologist I was taken to in the first year really helped. I realized that I was alone. Not because I was broken. It was just such a pain that it was easier not to let anyone in. I never made any close friends. But at least I stopped snapping at everyone. Hackathons became my passion. From university to federal. I was at the top everywhere. The prize money was accumulating. My name in the IT community was gaining weight. And at 20, everything changed. I won the digital breakthrough. The main federal hackathon. Personal ranking 1,000,000 rubles in prize money. But it's not even about the money. I was noticed. H-Index. VK. Spur. Denkov. Scams were pouring out like crazy. Journalists were rushing to interview me. Renovate VC. RU. Regional television. My face was flashing everywhere. A talented developer from Tver. Winner of a federal hackathon. A rising star of Russian IT. A month after the victory, I was sitting at my aunt and uncle's house, coding something on my laptop. The doorbell rang. Auntie went to open it, and I heard a voice that made me cringe inside. We came to Kira's, Natalia Viktorovna. 8 years of silence. And here she is standing on the threshold. She went out into the hallway. Mother and Artyom. He was already 22. Almost 1. At 26 meters tall. But I recognized him right away. Kira. Mother smiled broadly, as if girlfriends had met. God, how you have become. So grown up. Hi. Little sister. Artyom was beaming too. We are so glad to see you. I was silent. After 8 years, they showed up as if nothing had happened. You haven't remembered me for 8 years. I finally squeezed out. You haven't called once. Oh. Kirochka. What are you talking about? We were up to our ears in work. But we were thinking about you. That's why we came. Yeah. Right after we found out about the hackathon and the 1,000,000 in prize money. What a coincidence. Mother's face twitched. It wasn't about the money. Of course. You came because you understood. I have prospects now. And then we can ask for help. How can you say that? She started crying. We are a family. A family, I grinned. I learned cruelty from you when you abandoned me. Aunt Lida stood between us. I think it's time for you to go. Mother gave me an offended look and left, as if I had betrayed her. A few days later, my father called. His voice was tired and accented. He must have been in Germany for a long time. I heard about your success. I'm proud of you. Kira, I'm in Berlin now. If you want, I can help you move and study here. I'm not ready to talk yet. I understand. But think about it. Ilya, Arshisu, also in Germany with his father, picked up the phone. Hi. Kur. Maybe you could add me on VKontakte. Let's start chatting little by little. After 8 years of silence. It's not interesting. And she hung up. Another 2 years passed. Vitmo graduation. Red diploma. University gold medal. There was no room for an apple to fall in the assembly hall. When my name was announced, the hall exploded with applause. The rector presented a special certificate for outstanding achievements. Kira Borisova embodies the best qualities of our graduates. She has a brilliant future in the IT industry. I went up to the microphone. I want to thank the teachers for their knowledge and, most importantly, my parents Lydia Sergeevna and Boris Petrovich, who believed in me and gave me a chance. Everything I have achieved is thanks to them. They showed me what true love is. Auntie cried. Uncle beamed with pride. And I noticed them at the exit of the hall. All 4 of them, mother, father, Ilya, Artem. They got wind of the graduation ceremony from somewhere and showed up uninvited. They came up to you after the ceremony. We were always proud of you. Father tried to hug you. You could have thanked us. 2, added the mother. We gave you life. If I thanked you, I would have to tell you how you abandoned me in court 10 years ago. Kira, understand. Mother wrung her hands. It was better for everyone. I will never understand you and will not communicate. We are a family. Ilya tried. No. Lydia Sergeevna and Boris Petrovich. My family. And you are strangers with common DNA. You can't be angry forever. Artyom shook his head. If I want to communicate, I will find you. But for now, stay away from me. Turned around and went to celebrate with my real parents. Now I work in the Moscow office of Yandex. The salary is such that I can afford everything. I help my aunt and uncle. I bought them a new car. Paid for the renovation of their dacha. On Sundays I come to Tver. Soup. Tea. Conversations. Like in a normal family. Sometimes I think about biological relatives. But without pain, just no one. It's empty space. And that's okay. Stoi too. Hi there. I'm Odilon. According to my family, I failed. Too soft. Too quiet. Too unseen to ever be significant. At meals, they made jokes behind my back, called me jobless, even removed my name from the business I founded. I allowed them to do so for years. They believed they had them under control and dismissed them both until the day I entered the boardroom. Here's the bit they didn't anticipate. Though, if your own father had called you a mistake while paying a paycheck that had your signature at the bottom, how would you have responded? Tell me where you're listening from tonight before we start. What's more, would you have said nothing as I did? Or would you have said anything earlier, when I got out of my car and gazed up at the steakhouse's brilliant gold letters? It was almost 715. I hesitated a moment longer than I should have. Everything I already knew was shown to me by my reflection in the glass door. This is not what I was dressed for. I had crumpled my jacket on the passenger seat, causing it to wrinkle. My shoes didn't go with it. I entered, even though I hadn't had time to clean the lint off my pants. I was shown through the restaurant by the hostess, who smiled courteously, a bit too courteously. She continued, with a hint of something in her voice. They're already seated. I feel sorry. Curiosity. For a family supper. The table was too long. Chairs with high backs and dark wood. Pearl's father was wearing a golf jacket, and everyone else was their mother. My sister Isolde, wearing her typical soft pink cashmere, is encircled by her circle of admirers. While my elder brother Nathan is looking at his phone, I received a couple short nods and stares. No one got up to welcome me. I took the seat, just past the swinging door that let out kitchen sounds. It was at the extreme end, to next to the restrooms. Each time a waiter passed by, without saying anything, I slid into it. And then I saw the napkins. Everybody had an ancient name stitched in gold thread on a linen napkin that was neatly folded into a triangle. It appeared to have been steam-cooked. Gregory. Even my dad stated, but Mina, there was only one paper towel sheet, not even a paper napkin. Proper. It was only a cheap square that had been pulled off, folded in half, and placed next to the dish. I gave it too much attention. Nobody spoke. Not even a joke. Nothing but quiet. The crueler aspect was that I left it there with a smile. The waiter stopped by to collect orders for drinks. I requested lemon-flavored water. Nathan laughed and stated he was still sober. Well done, sis. It hurt more than it ought to have. The topic of careers came up. It did. Of course. Always. Isolde glowed. My company is completing a purchase. As she raised her wine glass, she spoke. 50 million assets, both international and domestic. Next week. They're putting their faith in me to conduct the client presentation. They all cheered as if they were in church. Dad grinned and remarked, "That's our girl. Some of us leave behind a legacy." Then he came over to me. "And a few of us. Try it." Then, the words weren't the only thing. The delay before trying was the reason, as if he had deliberately avoided gentler wording after considering it. I didn't answer. I tucked the paper towel away carefully after folding it again. Isolde leaned in my direction. "At least you have a lot of spare time. Honestly, that must be pleasant. The grind isn't for everyone." Mora jiggling, courteous, managed, mom even grind. But she swiftly steered away. In any case, Nathan, how is the deck remodeling in your backyard going? I sipped the water and let the chill to linger on my tongue. They believed I was unemployed. For months, they had held this belief. I quit my last job on my own terms, and in silence, I didn't correct what they thought. I gave credence to their whispers. She is adrift. She could be unemployed. She never had Isolde's level of determination. Give them time to reflect. Because the floor they were standing on was what I was constructing. I surveyed the table. Cherry wood. All right. China. A bottle of wine that was more expensive than my first post-college income. They didn't even aware they were dining at one of my establishments. And the air smelt like hubris and truffle butter. After putting the leather billfold next to my father, the server came back with the check. Isolde grabbed it. No. No. I understand. Dad. Don't worry. When Adelon is well again, she will be able to treat us. Everyone chuckled once again. Brief and well managed. Like a laugh track from a comedy. I glanced at the waiter. Non need. I answered. It's already covered. Is it older? Blinked. Purchased, I gave a nod. Household account. Dad scowled. Home account. What are you saying? I carefully placed the crumpled paper towel back down after picking it up and holding it between two fingers. I looked them in the eyes one by one. You're sitting in a house. I nodded to the server as I walked by him after gently pressing the napkin down. I didn't wait for their responses to calm down or for another remark. Before anybody had the courage to pose a serious inquiry, I left. The chilly night air felt good on my skin. With my keys in hand, I crossed the street to my car and tightened my coat. Headlights racing by, glasses clinking, and laughter from nearby tables filled the streets of downtown Atlanta. As I got into the driver's seat and shut the door, I let the stillness fall between me and each of them, like a curtain. I did not switch on the radio. I made no phone calls. I simply allowed the city to pass by my windows. Still recalling the feel of the embroidered napkin, my fingers were resting on the driving wheel. The irony-dipped silky feel of it on my fingertips. Just beyond the industrial sector, where the gleam of downtown gave way to fading lettering and drab concrete, I was stopped by a red light. It was still standing when I turned my gaze to the left. The storage facility. Not much had changed. The siding's paint flaking was worse than it had been. The bones were the same as they were 15 years before. But the windows had been updated. I had bet everything on those same bones. I stopped. At this hour, the parking lot was deserted. The humming sort of silence. I let my thoughts drift while I sat in the car with the motor running. In the past, that building had been everything. I used what little money I had saved from tutoring and part-time jobs to sign the lease when I was 23. The room was empty, with only a leaky roof and old cement floors. It was mine. Though, I used it as a launching pad. Though I knew no one would take me seriously, I had this idea for logistics automation software that could track, optimize, and anticipate delays before they occurred. Not at that age. Not with my name. I therefore made up a fictitious consulting business and pitched under that name. Everything was created from the ground up. Covered all night. I learned how to manage servers on my own. Worked double shifts and sent emails to businesses. One Sunday meal. I told my family about it at the time. It seems like yesterday when I recall this old reaction. She smirked. Fork paused midair and said, "What is this like?" Nerd fiction. Sounds like something out of a B-list sci-fi movie. Dad didn't even look up from his glass. You need to think about a real career. Honey. Something steady. HR. Would be a great fit for you. You're organized. They didn't ask questions. Just moved on. I laughed along with them that night. But when I got back to the warehouse, I cried for 20 minutes on the concrete floor. Then kept writing code. Months later, I landed my first real contract with a major freight company out of the Carolinas. They didn't care who I was. They appreciated outcomes. The system worked. But when I shared a sanitized version of the data out of naive pride, Isolde took it, dressed it up, rebranded it. She presented it to her company like it was her brainstorm. I didn't find out until Thanksgiving. I stepped into the living room and saw my dad toasting her in front of the family. To Isolde, he said, "For saving the project at her firm, she's got a mind like a general." No mention of me. No footnote. No wink. Just it. I stood there holding a pie I'd spent 4 hours cooking and felt my cheeks flush. Mom clapped. Nathan high-fived her. I sat in the corner and stayed silent. That was the moment things shifted. Not only that I was invisible, but that they were rewriting the tale and leaving me out. I didn't correct them. I didn't pick out the emails, the images, the code with my digital signature. I filed everything softly. Permanently. I told myself that if I ever got to tell the tale again, it would be on my terms and with receipts. My gaze returned back to the warehouse in front of me. It was no longer a shell. It now housed a shipping startup, one of several under my holding firm. I didn't use my name on most items. I discovered early on that it was preferable to be underestimated. However, I was the one who signed that lease. I owned the structure they disregarded. Additionally, the systems I had created in that very warehouse were used to process every payment my father and sister received. They didn't know. Every office they worked at had a lease signed by the unemployed female they highlighted. I did not look back as I walked out of the parking lot, like it didn't matter to anyone but me. The warehouse vanished into the mirror. It was a calm journey home. All I could hear were tires cutting the tarmac, and my mind replaying how Isolde had regarded me when I mentioned house account. In front of a sober audience, She appeared to be a magician whose act had just gone wrong. I was more at ease than I had anticipated. I didn't bother unpacking my purse when I arrived home. I drank a glass of water, kicked off my heels, and waited for the quiet to subside. There was no laughing reverberating through my condo's walls. However, at least they didn't resound with condemnation either. I went to bed after leaving my phone charging on the kitchen counter. I woke up to the sound of buzzing around 6:38 a.m. Ping, ping, ping. Before I touched it, the screen sprang to life. In the family group chat, there are 27 unread messages. I kept my thumb over it. I was aware of what I would discover. Before opening, that stomach tug is familiar. Something you couldn't ignore but didn't ask for. I gave Isolde a tap. Was that a scream for assistance or a flex dad? She has always been dramatic. She was unable to maintain a legitimate work because of this. Don't be hard on me, Mom. She had good intentions. I believe Isolde is experiencing another breakdown. The final word was a smack in the face. Disintegrate. When I stopped going to Sunday brunch after working 80-hour weeks and missed a wedding because I was flying back from Seattle with a signed merger deal in my briefcase. They gave me that moniker years ago. I didn't even blink my eyes. I just saved screenshots by pressing down on the conversation thread. No answer. No defense. Nothing but quiet. It's out of strategy, not weakness. My phone then buzzed once more. Separate conversation. Liam. My nephew. Liam. Antonio. Hello. This morning, I noticed the group chat. It's incorrect. In my opinion. I simply wanted to let you know that I support you. I stopped. It wasn't pain that made my chest clench. Something softer. Relief. Perhaps. There was another message. Liam. 2. I spotted this and felt you should include a snapshot. Even though Dad stated you wouldn't see it. A confidential side conversation. Sold to her spouse. Do not be concerned. When Dad retires, I'll take over as vice president. No. H.R. or Odilon is taken seriously by the board. She is simply the reserved person that attends galas. I read it twice. Then carefully again. The silent one. They came to that conclusion. I wasn't the strategist or the founder. Just someone who chose neutral nail polish and posed well in family portraits. I responded to Liam's SMS. You made the correct decision. Thank you. No hearts. No emojis. Just the facts. I then selected Leave Conversation after scrolling to the bottom of the family group chat options. It made no request for an explanation. I didn't either. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and poured myself another glass of water. I didn't even have to consider it. Emery has 2 assistants. Board consolidation is the subject. The senior personnel list for Phase 1 is attached. Every name was read twice by me. Isolde Aldridge. Senior Director of Logistics. Franklin Aldrich. Herman Aldridge. Vice President of External Partnerships. Serves as Interim President. There was a commonality among all 3. They continued to believe that the boardrooms they entered belonged to them. Correct. They were unaware that I had provided funding for the last round of bridge finance. They were unaware that I was the holding firm to which they reported. Furthermore, they had no idea that their keycards would stop functioning by next Tuesday. Tuesday was not the day I waited. I was at my work by Sunday evening. Outside my window, the city was calm and dark. Similar to the quiet that precedes a required storm, I launched a private browser window, reclined back, and drew my laptop closer. Nobody was able to track it down. The access link to Reynolds Human Capital, a consulting business renowned for its corporate culture, rehabilitation, was typed by my fingertips. Reynolds was what most people were unaware of. Bought discreetly years ago through one of my portfolio's lesser-known subsidiaries. Executive division of the subject. Review of culture. Instant access to Julia Reynolds' body. Start a thorough audit of every employee under Franklin and Isolde Aldridge. Within 24 hours, anonymous complaint gathering will start. Every discovery should be sent to the board compliance folder labeled Phase 1. No flags. No signatures. Let the data do the talking. Internal grievances started to pour into the inbox by Monday afternoon. Some had just a few lines. Others resembled journal entries. After being ignored for years, we're fortunate to have a family-run business, he says. But we're not family. We are expendable. In front of the interns, she referred to me as Grandma in Heels. You don't get promoted if you're not related to them. Isolde once made a joke at a Christmas gathering. Unbeknownst to them, some people age out of relevance. There I stood. It was my 50th birthday. I read them all. Not once. 3 times. An ancient scar was scraped by each line. I believed it to be healed. Inside, they established a little kingdom. Something that I made to be flat, equitable, and useful. And that kingship would fall today. Smooplik after smooplik. I was enjoying my second cup of coffee on Tuesday morning when the internal notice sounded, "There will be a mandatory compliance review meeting. Time of Isolde Aldridge, 1130A. M. Officer Amanda Roth. Senior Consultant. Reynolds. H. C. Assigned to Conference Room 3C. I didn't grin. I didn't have to. As Old as Heels reverberated down the marble corridor by 11:15, she entered my office with her chin up and her lips tight. And I looked through the opaque glass. After 5 minutes, my dad stormed into my office without knocking. "What is this?" he spoke loudly. Isolde was just caught in an ambush. "Why in the world are you doing this?" Dylan slowly. I put down my coffee. The rim's steam was still rising. The board took the initiative. "You are aware that transparency is a hot topic right now." He gave me a scowl as if I had smacked him. "Do you find this amusing? Do you honestly believe that the best way to prove yourself is to scrutinize your own sister calmly?" I folded my hands on the desk. "Although I believe it's past due, you are welcome to submit a formal protest. The procedure currently operates in this manner, not tantrums in the hallway." He appeared to want to toss something, but nothing within his grasp would save him from seeming foolish. The shaking in the frame stuck with me, even though he didn't smash the door when he rushed away. My legal aide, Emery, who was one of the few individuals in the organization who truly understood who I was behind the scenes, received a last command from me that afternoon. The folder should be left on the VPI conference table. No justification. Put a label on it. Preliminary results. Ethical issues. Verify that it's the red-tabbed variety. Just presence. No autographs. No opinion. Before the folder was even opened that evening, the rumors began to circulate, and I was aware of the purpose. If they believe this to be private, hold off until the board discovers what they have been concealing. The night before the anniversary event, I didn't get much sleep. I was already dressed when the daylight began to peek through my condo's wooden flooring. Dark pants and a navy silk blouse. Hair in a tidy bun. Not a sound. Nothing that demanded notice. Just subtle presence and crisp lines. The same manner that I constructed everything. They wouldn't look. It seemed like a long elevator journey up to the rooftop garden. As usual, above the faint notes of light jazz music, I could hear conversation. No one turned. But my heels clicked on the tiled walkway to the reception. Not a single head turned to look at me. Perhaps it was simpler that way. White seats were arranged in rows facing a stage with gold and navy curtain screens on either side that looped a slideshow highlighting the company's history. I crossed my legs and gently let my eyes to roam the screen after finding an empty seat at the rear that was neither too distant nor too close. There were my designs. I created the UI when I was 23, when I still thought they would be proud. I covered the mock-up in that dusty warehouse. However, beneath the pictures is strong white lettering that highlights Franklin and Isolde Aldridge's strategic objective, not even blinking. The montage came to an end. The CEO stepped onto the platform. A few board members came next. Cheers. Appropriate giggles at outdated office pictures. My father then came forward for the microphone exchange. His face hadn't changed much, but his voice had become even more assured, as if decades of praise had shaped it more deeply. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has contributed to this legacy, he remarked. A family doesn't get to create anything enduring very often. For emphasis, he paused and grinned down at the staff rows. Isolde, my daughter, deserves special recognition for her leadership, vision, and strategic acumen throughout the company's formative years. Again, polite applause. Isolde grinned as modestly as she could. Then he looked at my younger daughter, Odilon. Then toward the rear where I was sitting. I'm aware that you're still figuring things out. Continue. He laughed softly, as if it were a supportive giggle. A quiet sound was emitted by someone close to me. Another person chuckled, not in a nasty way. Like if they felt sorry for me. I got up. I didn't stutter or hurry. I continued down the side aisle until the atmosphere changed, until I was far behind the applauding and the music. I finally let out a breath after pushing open the hefty double doors and entering the lower patio. Continue. Not too far from the party, but close enough to be alone. I sat in my suit on the sidewalk. The echoes of their joy were too loud for me to hear. That sentence, it wasn't only a rejection. It summed up all of my contacts with them over the previous 20 years. Are you still looking for a place? As though I had been exploring rather than constructing. I gazed at the fountain in the courtyard's middle. As the early twilight dimmed, the water trickled softly over the string lights. I considered packing a suitcase, heading home, and vanishing. I had the money, the obscurity, and the silence. However, a young intern named Kayla was interrupted by a voice close to the stone archway where two corridors converged. I recalled that a middle-aged executive was reprimanding her. You don't just knock on a VPI door in the middle of a logistics discussion, he said. A chain of command exists. You are no longer a college student. She nodded, despite her cheeks crumpling. Last month, it was her who inquired about vendor integrations. Luminous eyes. Quick learner. With an armor-like embrace around a file folder. She turned and left. I saw her leave. I recognized the stroll I used to take when I had ideas and no one was interested. I remember being made fun of for asking pointless questions in rooms I wasn't supposed to be in. Back when I believed they may be correct. I tightened my hands as I glanced at the lights once again. I would allow them to steal my name, my space, and my credit. I would allow them to enclose me and pretend that I was still learning. However, it is no longer the case. Not after tonight. Slowly, I dusted the dust from my trousers, got up, and walked back toward the corridor that went inside. Perhaps it was time for them to hear my voice if they were brave enough to remain silent. Perhaps it was time for them to hear my voice if they were brave enough to remain silent. Monday morning came with a false sense of peace. The city was buzzing with its typical unconsciousness, and the sky over Midtown were a faint stretch of gray. I parked at the executive garage's 4th floor. As usual, same key fob, same space. However, I wasn't simply turning up today. I adjusted my blazer, tapped the Bluetooth in my ear, and got out of the car. I walked silently toward the service elevator and murmured, "Start phase 2, without hesitation." My assistant said, "Yes, Miss Aldridge." The system initiated what we referred to as a quiet lockdown as the elevator doors shut behind me. Only back-end selective access changes, no system-wide notices or warning banners. The cleanliness was surgical. The IT security team had already started putting the policy into practice when I arrived at my workplace. I saw the courtyard down below, where staff were just beginning to arrive. From my window, they were all unaware that by lunchtime, some doors will be closed to some individuals. I went to the admin area and logged in. Zelda Aldridge and Franklin Aldridge are at the top of the list. Having both had their executive security override removed, I didn't grin. Retaliation wasn't the point here. Control was at issue here. Getting back something I shouldn't have lost in the first place. A notice showed up on my screen at 9:02 a.m. No access. An attempt to connect into the Aldridge Air server was rejected, then another access was refused. The request to enter the F. Aldridge Financial Archives was denied. I turned to face my helper, who was holding a tablet at the edge of the doorway. Ensure that their responses are recorded? After giving one nod, she walked out of the room. A ripple had already begun to form by late morning, demanding to know why her credentials weren't functioning. Isolde had barged into HR. I was not required to be present. I had surveillance footage, logs, and a timestamp. I let the statistics do the talking. However, revenge arrived by lunchtime. A flagged message from Internal Affairs buzzed across my phone. A potential attempt at character defamation is urgent. An anonymous, unsigned PDF that said I had falsified performance reports due to emotional instability is attached. It was tinged with worry. The type that conceals its clause with phrases like unfit and erratic. I learned everything from the file information. It had been made the previous evening on a machine that belonged to his former helper. Before she used that laptop to create her quarterly reports, I had seen its IP address. Careless. I stood up and closed the file. There was no need for a meeting. All I needed was a hallway. At first, she didn't notice me coming. With her face taut with fake serenity and her chin high, she clicked her heels quickly along the hallway. She stopped for just a moment when she saw me. I even remarked, "If you're going to leak fake documents, better encryption." At least, she narrowed her eyes after blinking. "You're simply resentful. You weren't picked by Dad." "Did he pick you?" I inquired. "When I was constructing everything you stood on. Did you simply talk louder?" Isolde's head cocked. "Odie. He never thought of you as a leader. He didn't even consider you a rival." I moved in closer. "He never saw," I said. For a period, I didn't wait to hear her counter-argument. Before the pain of what I had spoken had really subsided, I turned to go. I went back to my office and composed a last message to legal, to the Ethics Committee and HR. Findings of subject wrongdoing. A complete board review is necessary. Isolde wasn't imitated by me. I didn't take after my dad. I just hit the transmit button. After that, I wrote a note in my planner. 10 a.m. on Thursday, conference room 9B. Full board. The gathering wouldn't be visible to them. Send out invitations before it's too late. The boardroom door had already latched behind them, before they learned the meeting was mandatory. The door clicked behind them as soon as they had entered the meeting room. There was no loud noise, only a neat mechanical lock that made it obvious it wouldn't be opening again very soon. The board was to my left. Legal counsel was opposite from me, and I was already seated at the head of the long walnut table. Nobody spoke. The quiet was effective. My dad scowled. "What is this?" Isolde looked around the room and her heels halted, eyes flitting between the faces. One more check for conformity. Faking a half grin as if it may yet win someone over. She questioned. Calmly, I gestured to the frosted glass behind them. "For secrecy. The doors are shut. You should sit down." After hesitating, they sat down. Very much like warnings. The chairs scraped. I leaned a little forward. Even a voice. "Let's get started." I handed the board secretary a pile of documents. The members grabbed for theirs. opening the covers one by one. Shell company diagrams, transfer memoranda, and incorporation documents. Then came the actual surprise. My name. Majority stakeholder. The place fell silent, like a chill breeze. My dad's mouth tightened. This is absurd. Is it? I tilted my head in question. Because the Delaware office of the Secretary of State appears to disagree, your signature does. 2. That's right. I stirred, transferring Class B shares to a company that I just so happened to own. His hands trembled only a little as he turned the pages more quickly. Isolde was still standing. She ran her fingertips over the edge of the folder as if it were about to bite. He said again, more to himself than to anybody else. This is a trick. No, I answered in a firm voice. This is the past. I just wasn't in yours. The air was heavy. You could still hear paper being shuffled and breathing. Nothing else. Until I pushed a tiny black remote control that I had retrieved from my blazer's side pocket. I said, let's analyze culture. Voices came first, followed by the crackling of a ceiling speaker. Isolde. Clearly, half of the teams are coasting. You don't have a voice if you're not family. Next, laughter. The women left the room as her father spoke. On the back and forth, you save time. One of the board members tensed. Another blinked quickly as he glanced down at the table. I gave it 10 more seconds to play. I then selected pause. 3 months ago, those were taken. Complete with your quarterly off-site refreshments. Someone cleared their throat. I think the board has given too much praise to the wrong individuals. Let's examine more closely at what you've been clapping for. I replied. Another shuffle. At the far end, the legal advisor took out a memo from his own folder. According to him, these and other remarks gathered throughout our research seem to be in violation of the company's ethical code. Clause 14 requires a required contract review where the violations are combined with share manipulation and the concealment of legitimate credit. He made a sale. He was pallid now. My father stopped talking and leaned back. The loudest sound in the room could have been that. The chairman's hands were folded. Slowly, he murmured, Mr. Aldridge. Miss Aldridge, we need your resignations by today's end of business. My father sold, after opening his lips and closing it again. His voice broke. This is not possible. I fixed my blazer and stood up. Did you wish to remove me? I looked at each of them and replied, to preserve your sense of power, the exact thing you attempted to keep me out of will now be removed from your memory. After that, I turned, went to the door, and gave a nod. The lock behind me snapped open as soon as I reached the assistant who was waiting outside. I revised the conclusion since they had excluded me from the company's history. My clothing were still stuck to the boardroom air. I didn't sit down or let out a breath until I returned to my workplace. As if it owed me something, I went directly to the window, drew aside the blinds, and gazed out at the metropolitan skyline. Only this release, I said, turning around and tapping my assistant's phone. The assertion. The press release was all over the place. 20 minutes later. The headlines are thunderous. Following an internal ethics shakeup, the company will undergo significant transformation. The new administration says nepotism and bigotry are not tolerated. For the first time, my name appeared on it without any concealment. Aldridge. Ottoline. Hundreds and hundreds of texts and emails flooded in. Current supervisors. Retired staff members. Former interns. And particularly, women contacted out. Some people expressed gratitude in entire paragraphs. Others just sent a simple thank you message. It was long overdue. Humiliating. And overpowering. I came about it when perusing the online mentions. An old coworker from the early days that I hardly remembered shared a side-by-side picture. One picture was outdated, faded, wearing jeans and t-shirts. Our original founding team was standing in the warehouse. All of us, smiling. near the rear. I was partially hidden by a folding table. The cropped image from the same day is the other picture. However, I'm in the middle of the foreground this time. She constructed it. According to the caption, they simply stood before it. It struck more forcefully than I had anticipated. Within hours, the post went viral. Desperation accompanied that virality. That night, while sitting side by side on a beige sofa and attempting to appear unguarded, Isolde and my father went live on social media. She had flawless makeup. He spoke in a theatrical tone. With an almost tremulous voice, Isolde said, "She's been planning this for years. Justice was not at issue here. This was retaliation." My father, who was always understanding, followed up with Odell. She found it difficult to accept criticism. Although we adore her, she has been manipulating this story to harm the business. Together, we constructed. I didn't recoil. Others posted a retort, but I didn't. Anonymous leaks of screenshots from internal correspondence surfaced. Whistleblowers emerged from the shadows. Stories of arbitrary demotions, rude remarks, and exclusion from important meetings were recounted by former employees. Trends became apparent. Within 1 hour, their videos' comments turned against them. One lady stated, "I was fired after telling HR that Isolde made fun of my stammer. She must have been deliberate about that as well." Another person wrote that her father advised her not to dress too ambitiously. This is instantaneous karma. Silently, I watched it all happen. I then made a little video. I took a seat at my desk. No makeup. No lighting team. The lens and I alone. I responded, "I believe in truth, but I don't believe in takedowns." Silence is a weak foundation for success. I kept quiet long enough. I left off the hashtags. No editing. No music. It was not just a trending clip. It struck a chord. After declining earlier that week, our company's stock steadied before rising. Integrity was valued by investors more than denial. And in the middle of everything, unexpectedly, something occurred. My home address received a delivery. A vintage cardboard box that had been meticulously packed and labeled in my mother's handwriting. Handwriting I hadn't seen in more than 10 years. A sealed package, a charm bracelet, and a few family photographs are inside. I could still read the little, faded, and occasionally blurred note within. Do not allow them to minimize you in order to suit their universe. You were destined to construct your own. I held that paper in both hands while I sat there for a long time. Her voice reverberated across the ages. I put the message next to a freshly framed picture on my office bookcase later that evening. The warehouse one. The version without cropping. But I was in the spotlight this time. I did more than simply modify the conclusion. This rendition was above their wildest expectations. It had been 3 months. The workplace was quieter now. Yet it seemed more lively in some way. Free-flowing conversations took place. Hurried whispers in elevators are over. No more looking over people's shoulders. Just the cadence of individuals working fearlessly and efficiently. There were no double takes as I moved around the main level as I had hundreds of times before. Nobody is attempting to position me. No erroneous presumptions. They were now aware that the cloak was gone. No background pseudonym or borrowed title. I didn't hide behind the majority stakeholder or the project creator. I just strolled. And both they and I saw each other. A man in accounting smiled and nodded as he went by me. A facilities management woman waved. A clipboard in the shape of a trophy. Even the intern I once helped get through her first briefing on logistics. She raised her head. Later that week, I sat in one of the breakout rooms with the intern. She hesitated, tinkering with the corner of her notepad and tapping her pen. I considered leaving. She eventually acknowledged. I didn't believe that people like us belonged here after everything that had transpired. I saw her not as a supervisor or even a mentor, But as someone who understood what it was like to doubt your own position in a space that had been constructed by others, I understand how you feel. But don't let them teach you to disappear. I added quietly. She didn't weep. But she blinked rapidly, simply grinned and nodded. It was the type of modest success that I used to believe was inconsequential. As it happens, they are the most important. As the days went by, as my father and I grew older, the ambient sounds turned to static. Neither had gone back to work. The consulting legacy of my father vanished into obscurity. Isolde attempted to open her own shop, but within weeks, her reputation preceded her, and prospective customers began to leave. I'm sure they still held me responsible, but now they did so from a distance, in dimly lit rooms that weren't theirs. One evening at home, with my mother's words still carefully folded next to my desk, I went back to that letter. I did more than simply read it this time. I put it in a frame. I placed it next to a brand new plaque that said CEO Odilon Maris, directly above my computer display. Initials in email footers are no longer acceptable. No more editing speeches by others. There will be no more chairs at table corners. I contributed to creating my voice, my position, and my name. Those mornings were peaceful and calm. Now, I would get to my workplace early, get a cup of fresh coffee, and walk into the foyer where it all began. I had waited for an interview in the same lobby years prior, clutching a CV and wearing borrowed heels, while a receptionist looked straight through me. No one would ask for it. There was now a quote, not a catchphrase or mission statement, etched into the glass behind the same registration desk. Just the plain facts. Not everyone raises their voice. We construct spaces so that everyone else can at last. When visitors read that, they stopped. While the new recruits took pictures, I would walk by, just being there, with no announcements or cheers. That was sufficient. I revised the conclusion, since they had excluded me from the company's history. In addition, my family attempted to shrink me in order to fit me into their frame. But I wasn't made to fit. I was made to construct new ones.